Welcome, one and all, to the Viper's Nest, where, as you can see, we're talking about Resident Evil 4 again, because I finally finished my first playthrough of Resident Evil 4 Remake. It took me a bit. It took me a bit. Here's why, mostly. So, the living room where I play tends to be a very brightly lit area, and it's only getting more so as Alaska transitions into spring and then into summer, because I've yet to get blackout curtains for my living room, and quite a few portions of Resident Evil 4 Remake are very dark. So it made me kind of hard to play. I literally had to wait until the sun went down before I was able to continue playing. But just yesterday, I finally got through my first playthrough, so I finally feel like I can give this game the review that it deserves. So just a heads up warning, it's going to sound like I'm complaining a lot, and here's why. One, I'm under time constraints, and two, I would literally be here all day if I tried to talk about everything I loved about this game. It's literally simpler and quicker to talk about the few things that I didn't like. So, I'm not bitching about this game. In fact, I think this game is fantastic, and definitely deserves all the 10 out of 10 ratings it's getting, because just pretty much everything about this game is good. The graphics, the gameplay, the revamped dialogue, the acting, the environments, the sound design, literally it was tough finding things to actually say I didn't like about this game. There is nothing in this game that I actually outright hated except for one very specific thing, and it wasn't even anything that made the game bad. It's just something that the game was missing that I'm gonna get to. So this game, I highly recommend it. It's so goddamn good. If you have any love at all for the original Resident Evil 4, pick up Resident Evil 4 Remake. It's everything. Well, okay, it's not everything you loved about the original, but it's a lot you loved about the original, cranked up to 1100. So let's start off with the things that I didn't like about this game. There are very few of them. So one thing that I didn't like was that Leon and the villains don't trash talk each other over the radio anymore. And I can understand why they did that. As much as this game still has goofs in it, and it has a lot of goofs, they were definitely going for a more serious tone with this game, so they stripped that out completely, which unfortunately led to the loss of quite a few fan-favorite lines. The one that was definitely conspicuous by its absence was just before the Verdugo boss fight. You call up, or Salazar calls you on the radio and informs Leon that he sent his right hand to dispose of him, and Leon just very calmly asks, "Your right hand comes off?" Yeah, just stupid lines like that, unfortunately, got taken completely out of the game, which is real sad. Annabelle, lay down. Sorry, I'm yelling at my dog. Lay down. Annabelle, lay down. Annabelle. Do you want to go back in kennel? I don't think you do. Lay down. Excuse you. Thank you. Stay. Good grief, corgis, am I right? Yeah, all of the exchanges between Leon and Sadler got taken out as well because they stripped out the radio conversations. And honestly, my absolute favorite line of dialogue, in the entire video game, was when Sadler is talking about, why don't I introduce you to it? It should keep you busy. And Leon's like, oh, can't remember the name, huh? A senior moment, perhaps? And he gets an actual genuine kind of got me laugh out of Sadler. And that's just not there anymore. And that's real sad. And speaking of it, that's the one thing that I actually kind of hate about this game. They took the It boss fight completely out of the game. It is gone. And that's real freaking sad, because all the other boss fights in the game were absolutely amazing. The standouts for me in particular were the Verdugo boss fight and the Krauser boss fight. And In the end, like, as much fun as I had knife dueling Krauser, which I did in fact beat Krauser with a knife. I did not shoot him once, because that's how you did it in the original game. If you were like super duper gamer, you beat Krauser with a knife. So I beat Krauser with a knife again, and that was freaking amazing. But the thing about the Verdugo boss fight is that, like, you knew it was coming. Like, after you fall into the spike pit, you're going through the tunnels, and you find the fucking, like, valves or whatever that unleash the liquid nitrogen. Like, I knew. I'm like, oh, I know what's about to happen here. We're about to fight the Pred alien. And it was legitimately scary. I think it was even more scary because I knew exactly what was coming, but I didn't know when it was going to arrive. Like, I spent probably a good, like, 20 minutes creeping around, like, that underground lab area, like, looting stuff, looking for the way out. And the whole time, like, you could fucking hear the Verdugo, like, clanging around up in the ceiling and stuff like that. And you're, like, you'd hear him and you'd be like, shit, fucking freeze. Like, God damn it. Where is he? Where is he popping up from? I know he's here. Where is he? God damn it. And then eventually, like, the boss fight arrived properly, and the fight was just as good as it was in the original game. Hit him with the liquid nitrogen, blast the shit out of him with your most powerful weapons. You can do that boss fight where you're just trying to escape and you just leave his ass down there, but you don't, because he drops really good treasure. So I defeated him. But yeah, the lead up to the Verdugo fight, just knowing what was about to happen, but not knowing exactly when it was going to happen, was just 10 out of 10, chef's kiss supreme. And let's see, is there anything else I didn't like about the game? See, the radio conversations, the missing it. No, there really isn't anything else I didn't like about the game. All around, I really loved this game. It's the game Resident Evil fans fucking deserve, and it's great. I mean, there's a few more things I could talk about, some things that I don't know how I feel about, which is really only one thing I don't know how I feel about. So I feel, I could be wrong, but I feel that the character of Sadler got a pretty drastic change throughout the course of this game. So back in old original Resi 4, Sadler, he was still like the creepy cult leader and all that, but he was also very much like a mustache twirling supervillain, which I just fucking loved. Like, just the way his actor delivered some lines, like, you could kind of tell that, like, Sadler in OG Resi 4 believed the BS he was preaching on, like, some level, but he was also very definitely in it for the power. Like, the whole plan of, like, kidnapping Ashley, the president's daughter, infecting her with the Las Plagas, sending her back to her dad to get her dad infected. It's very much a supervillain kind of plot. And Sadler fucking knew it too, and he really didn't give a shit who else knew that he was really only just in this for the power. So he was a lot more like megalomaniacal and fucking over the top. Like when he's explaining his master plan to Leon in the church, he's like, isn't this a revolutionary way to propagate one's faith? He's just being a supervillain, and you could tell he was fucking loving being a supervillain. Remake Sadler is all in on like the cult and religious aspect, which makes him, I think, a more deeply unsettling character, but less of like a surface level entertaining kind of character, if you get what I'm saying. He wasn't near, like, he's still very much, kind of over the top with some of his stuff, especially when he starts like yelling at while simultaneously preaching during his final boss fight. It's good. It's definitely good, and it's deeply unsettling, but do I like it more than over-the-top supervillain Sadler? I really honestly don't know. I think I'm gonna have to chew on that one a bit more, because I do very much enjoy both portrayals of Sadler, but I really don't know which one I like better. It's a hard choice. But speaking of something that I definitely did like, that I'm going to shout out specifically, is the way they kind of recharacterized Leon in this game. Like, Leon, like, I call this version of Leon Grumpy Leon because it just seems like right from the second he steps out of the police cruiser at the beginning of the game, he's just already done with this entire adventure. He doesn't want to be here. He's grumpy. He's tired of this crap that he has to deal with, but he's going to do it anyway because he knows it's the right thing. God, just Grumpy Leon is great. Like, I think my favorite Grumpy Leon part of the game is when you, like, right before the boss fight with Salazar, which Salazar is also great in this game. Like, Salazar starts into his, like, villainous monologue, and, like, he had a whole thing to say to Leon in original Resi 4, but in this version, like, he starts monologuing, and Leon just says, "You talk too much," and he just pulls out his pistol and fucking shoots Salazar to start the boss fight. Oh, it was great. I was laughing so hard. But again, I miss all the trash talking between Leon and Salazar over the radio. Like, they did keep a lot of it in Salazar's actual boss fight, where Salazar was like, "You're nothing but a bit character in this play," and Leon's like, "Don't put me in your crappy script." And they have the whole exchange about that. It's really good. Oh shit! Speaking of Salazar, something I hated, something I did actually hate now that I think about it, is the same thing I hated back in OG Resident Evil 4. And this, I understand, is purely a personal taste thing because there's a lot of people that love this thing that I'm about to mention, but I just couldn't fucking stand it. So this one's entirely on me. This is not me calling this, like, bad game design or anything like that, because I fully recognize that it's not. The fucking hedge maze. God, do I hate the fucking hedge maze. I hated the hedge maze back in 2005. I still hate the hedge maze in 2023. It is easily my hands down least favorite part of the entirety of Resident Evil 4 is the fucking hedge maze. I hate it. I don't like mazes. I've never been a fan of mazes. I don't like them. I don't like them. I don't want them in my video games, but, survival horror game, there's going to be a maze. Like, I get it. I understand. Mazes are an integral part of this. I just fucking hate it. I really do. So, moving on from there. I guess before I go into, like, my final Uber breakdown, which I do have some stuff to say about this game as a whole rather than nitpicking, I'm going to give you guys a few tips that might help you with your own run-throughs of this game because, look, I'm not going to mince words here. Even on normal, this game can be brutally difficult. Like, if you're not on your toes at all times, like, you can and will get your shit kicked in by this game, even on normal difficulty. So, here's a few things I found that made my way through this game just a little bit easier. All right, first, and most importantly, if you don't listen to any other thing I say in this video, please listen to these next words. Do the merchant requests and buy the treasure maps. Because the treasure maps and the extra income they bring are a godsend, and they will help you out, even if it's just as something as simple as, like, having that extra bit of cash on hand to buy a first aid spray from the merchant when you really, really need it. The treasure maps, probably the most important thing in this game to, like, your continued survival. Do the requests for the merchants. Yes, I know they break up the flow of the game a little bit, like, oh man, now I gotta go fucking turn around and go back to where I already was to find 3 rats to kill. Trust me, they're gonna be worth it. They will be, I promise, especially if you spend them on the treasure maps. Get the treasure maps, they're important. Second, the bolt thrower. Now, a lot of people that I've seen get the bolt thrower, try it out, and they never pick it back up again because they determine that that weapon is garbage. And look, I'm going to be real with you. With the starting stats, yeah, the bolt thrower is actually fucking garbage. It sucks. But hear me out. So the bolt thrower with base stats is terrible. It's got like an ammo capacity of 3, a slow-ass reload speed, it's not very accurate, and the bolts don't actually do much more damage than, like, the pistol does. So all around, the bolt thrower fucking sucks. But there are 2 things that the bolt thrower does really, really well, even with its starting base stats. 1, it's very good at staggering enemies and interrupting attacks. And 2, you can recover your ammunition after you kill the enemy. Or if you miss and you didn't shoot the bolt into some place you can't reach, you can just walk over and pick it back up again. So this ties in with the whole thing of doing the merchant requests and getting the treasure maps. So the bolt thrower out the gate is hot garbage. But when you start upgrading it and get it to max, the bolt thrower becomes a fucking murder machine. Like, single enemies, no problem. Like, the bolt thrower, just on its own, pretty much single-handedly alleviates all the problems I had with the knife from the demo, and the knife having its durability and stuff, because the bolt thrower can do essentially exactly what the knife does, but at range. So when I got the bolt thrower and started upgrading it, the knife was pretty much relegated specifically to parry duty and the occasional execution or quick time event against the boss. So when you max out the bolt thrower, it fires a little bit slower than like the pistols can, but it winds up getting an ammo capacity of 10 or 20 if you purchase its exclusive upgrade, which you can do now without having to fully upgrade weapons if you end up saving up the spinal gems that you get from the merchant requests. Like my actual one and only purchase of an exclusive ticket was for the bolt thrower, to get the bolt thrower's ammo capacity from 10 to 20. Excuse me, I need to hydrate for a second. There we go. Yeah, don't sleep on the bolt thrower. Like, get it, and like at the start, maybe only use it against like single or like, 2 enemies at a time. Don't aim for the head with the bolt thrower unless you're like point blank. But an easier target for the bolt thrower, which is how I used it, I aimed for the legs. Because even if I missed the legs on the first shot, the bolt I missed is just going into the floor, so I can go pick it back up again when I'm done. But, like, if you bolt an enemy's leg, pretty much they're going to go into like a kneeling stance, which sets them up for a melee attack, and then either a follow-up execution with the knife, or you can just like stand over them stand like 5-10 feet away and just pump bolts into their downed body until they stop twitching, and then just go and pick back up all your bolts. Even when they had like the plagas like erupting from their heads and going into like head eater mode or blade tentacle mode, if you have the room, you can just stand out of range with the bolt thrower and just keep shooting them in the chest. And it might take 10 to 15 bolts to put down a single plaga-headed enemy, but once you maximize the bolt thrower's fire rate, you can pump out those bolts pretty friggin' fast. And all of this, being able to, recover the bolts, take down pretty much any fucking standard enemy you can find in the game with the bolt thrower and get your ammo back, that's ammo you're not spending out of all of your other guns. So, like, whenever I walked into a boss fight after I got the bolt thrower and started upgrading it, I had so much fucking ammo that I actually, like, had to stop at multiple times in the game, look at my inventory and be like, do I really want to take this shit that's on the ground and lose something I already have? Or do I want to keep the stuff I already have in my inventory and just leave this extra stuff behind? It was a tough fucking decision a few times, and I'm glad the bolt thrower allowed me to get to that point in the game where I had to stop and think, do I want to pick this thing up? Or do I want to, leave it and not have it later? It's tough fucking call. So, any other tips I can give you? Oh, yeah, even if you get the bolt thrower, maximize the knife's durability, because the parry mechanic in the game is fucking awesome and an absolute lifesaver once you get used to it. So, you start out with one repairable knife, and later on, spoiler alert, after you defeat Krauser, you also get his knife. So you can have 2 repairable knives in your inventories. And if you max out the durability on both of them, for like pretty much for the entire time after I got Krauser's knife, my knives didn't break. Like, when one started getting low on durability, I would just switch it out for the other one. And by that point, like, there's pretty much always a merchant nearby, so I was able to keep my knives topped up, so I had parries all the time. And from what I've heard from other people, possibly something to look out on your first playthrough, There's these little guys called Clockwork Castellans, which are basically like little kind of bobblehead figures of Ramon Salazar. And if you break all of those, you unlock a knife that has infinite durability. So, like, that's next on my list when I pick this game back up, which is not going to be too far into the future because they're dropping the free Mercenaries DLC, which I'll probably have to do a video on that one as well. I'm a little sad the game didn't release with Mercenaries, but I am also happy that we're getting it so soon after launch. So that's good. Now, on to what is probably going to get me absolutely crucified on the internet. So, a lot of people, like, there's an ongoing debate among parts of the fandom. Is Resident Evil 4 or Resident Evil 2 the better game? Now, I come down firmly on the side of Resident Evil 2. And before you drag me onto my front lawn and burn me, allow me to explain why. What I'm saying here, I'm not saying that Resident Evil 4 is not a great game, either version, because both versions of this game are absolutely phenomenal. I mean, original Resident Evil 4, like, almost revolutionized the way that games are made. Like, without Resident Evil 4, we wouldn't have Dead Space as we know it. Like, the makers of Dead Space straight up admitted they referenced Resident Evil 4 while they were building their game. And we wouldn't have other games like Gears of War or really any other third-person shooter games as we know them today without original Resident Evil 4. So, I'm not saying that Resident Evil 4 is not a great game, because it is. Here's what I am saying, and I will explain why. I don't consider Resident Evil 4, either version, a good Resident Evil game. Now, please, stop, again, before you burn me. This is my own opinion. This is not, like, don't take any of this shit out of context, please, because I love both versions of Resident Evil 4. But in comparison to Resident Evil 2, I'm going to say Resident Evil 2 is the better Resident Evil game. And now I'm going to explain why. No more stalling. So, in my opinion, how to say this without sounding like a dick? Okay, so, there's a reason why I don't consider Resident Evil 4 or Resident Evil Village good Resident Evil games. Or I guess what I should be saying is I don't consider them good Resident Evil stories, might be more accurate. So here's why. Like, all of the other really, really good Resident Evil games have, like, overtones of corporate greed. So let me explain. So, like, in pretty much all the other games, except for 4, 8, and probably, like, a few spin-off titles that I probably haven't played, there's this pervading sense of, like, corporate greed or corporate malpractice. Like, Umbrella's always involved somehow, and Umbrella always fucked up, and that's why the situation is as it is. So, like, Resident Evil 1, you have the mansion, Umbrella was doing research at the mansion, illegal research, shit went wrong, zombies happened. Resident Evil 2, the zombies got into the city. Then there's the whole thing of William Birkin trying to escape with the G-Virus to sell the G-Virus to someone else, and Umbrella trying to stop William Birkin so they can get the G-Virus for themselves. Resident Evil 3, same setting. Resident Evil 5, you have the whole shit going on behind the scenes with, like, Tricell and stuff like that. Resident Evil 6 has Neo Umbrella. Resident Evil 7 has, I think they were called, like, what, the Company? The Commission? Whoever the hell it was that Mia Winters was working for, trying to transport the Evelyn bioweapon, and then that shit got out of hand. The boat crashed. Louisiana happened. Like, Resident Evil Revelations 1 has the whole fucking, what is it? It's not TerraSave, it's Veltro, the Veltro terrorist organization who was secretly working with the guy who founded, I think, like, the FBC, I think, the Federal Bioterrorism Commission, and the whole backroom dealing with all that kind of stuff. Resident Evil Revelations 2 has Neil and him trying to screw over TerraSave to get rich. Like, pretty much all the games have this overtone of corporate greed and malpractice. And the reason this is so important is because that's something that resonates with a lot of people. Like, you take a look at one of the greatest movies of all time, right? James Cameron's Alien. If you removed the character of Carter Burke and the whole thing about Wayland Yutani wanting to get their hands on a xenomorph sample, like, if you just took that out of the movie, all you would really have is, like, a good sci-fi action horror movie. Like, don't get me wrong, the movie would still be fucking great, but it would be just like another sci-fi action horror movie among a lot of sci-fi action horror movies that, were coming out around that time. But it was the character of Carter Burke and the whole Wayland Yutani trying to get aliens for their own purposes that really made the story, like, resonate with a lot of people because, in the real world, corporate greed is something that's very, very prevalent. It's something people are still dealing with to this day. Like, God knows how many years after James Cameron's Aliens actually came out, we're still struggling with that kind of stuff. And that's the thing that I think is missing from the story of Resident Evil 4 and also Resident Evil Village. They switched out the corporate stuff for more religious overtones, which is not a bad thing at all. They're both still really, really good stories, but just in my opinion, you can't have a good Resident Evil story without those corporate overtones. Like, to me, personally, the story of Umbrella and all the stuff that was going on, behind the scenes, behind the zombies and the monsters and the survival stuff, the stuff going on behind the scenes with, like, William Birkin, Chief Irons, Wesker, all the stories you find in, like, the files and stuff that are detailing, like, why Resident Evil was, like, really happening, like, why the Raccoon City incident happened, what caused it, specifically, like, fucking Umbrella sending Hunk and his boys into Raccoon City to try and get the G-Virus is one of the, like, the big kickoffs that caused Raccoon City to happen. That's the most interesting part of the story to me, is, like, the whys and the hows and all the corporate bullshit that goes on behind the scenes of these really, really good games. That's what makes them really interesting to me, and that's what makes Resident Evil specifically stand out from the crowds amongst, like, all the other survival horror games, of which there are many, and I love a lot of them too, but Resident Evil, to me, stands above the rest because of the overtones of corporate greed. So, the point is, do I think Resident Evil 4 is a better Resident Evil game than Resident Evil 2? No. No, I don't. Does that mean I don't absolutely fucking adore Resident Evil 4? No. No, it doesn't. I just think that Resident Evil 2 tells a better Resident Evil story than Resident Evil 4, because Resident Evil 4, to me, isn't telling a complete Resident Evil story. But again, that's just my opinion. I would love to hear your opinions on this, storytelling argument that I presented. But before you do any of that, you should go purchase Resident Evil 4 Remake and play the shit out of it, because Mercenaries is coming very, very soon, and I cannot wait, because thanks to a leak, I know that my boy Hunk is in Mercenaries mode, which, holy crap, let me tell you how fucking furious I would have been if they left Hunk out of Mercenaries mode. Just, You would have done a bad, Capcom, if you had done that. But you didn't, and I'm happy. I'm happy he's in there. Well, anyway, that's going to be it for me. Thank you very much for listening to this video. A like and a subscribe would be appreciated. I'd love to see some opinions in the comments. I will see you on the next episode, probably not long after Mercenaries drops. And as always, have yourself a wonderful day.